White has become the standard color for airplanes' exteriors. While stylish, it's also a calculated decision by many airlines. White essentially reflects sunlight instead of absorbing it, like other colors do. This is great for keeping the plane's interior temperature down. It's the same as getting into a white car on a sunny day. Its inside is probably cooler than a black car's would be. And since constant exposure to sunlight often causes many colors to fade anyways, thanks to oxidation, white becomes a practical choice. White is easy to spot, whether in the air, on the ground, or in the case of a crash in the sea. And it's easy to see cracks or chips in the paint when that paint is white. This detection is important because dirt and moisture can quickly collect in these chips, becoming sites of corrosion that could eat away at the aircraft's body. This is one reason, in fact, that planes are usually painted at all instead of being left as polished metal. Painted metal more readily resists corrosion than unpainted metal. You'll often see plastic, fiberglass, or carbon fiber painted white on planes too. This is because these parts of the plane are easily susceptible to sun damage, which the white paint helps prevent. So why aren't all planes pure white? Advertising. After a white base, airlines will often paint their brand name on the side and their colors on the tail of the plane. When human females are pregnant, they're advised to stay away from alcohol for fear of harming the fetus. And most parents refrain from giving their infants bottles full of whiskey or beer for obvious reasons. But if you're a fruit fly, literally dousing your offspring in alcohol is apparently one of the best ways to protect them from danger, particularly from certain types of wasps. How and why? Let's back up a bit. First, certain types of wasps prey on fruit flies by injecting eggs inside fruit fly larvae. Unless an infected larva kills the wasp egg, it hatches and the wasp larva eats its way out from inside the fruit fly larva, killing it. One way for fruit fly moms to protect against this gruesome fate is to lay their eggs in an alcohol-soaked environment, such as fermenting fruit, when they see that parasitic wasps are around. Although alcohol is toxic to fruit flies, it's even more toxic to wasps, which, unlike fruit flies, have not evolved a high level of alcohol tolerance. So, if the larvae eat enough alcohol-rich food, it can kill the wasp egg and keep it from hatching. Apparently, fruit flies are not the only fly species to use alcohol to protect their young. In fact, it seems that most flies that eat rotting fruit use the alcohol defense against wasps. So fruit flies are not unique in this regard, but they're still mighty impressive. There are two main reasons why parents decide to educate their children at home. Either they dislike schools on principle, however odd those principles might be, or they don't believe their local schools provide an adequate education or the right sort of education for their children. If someone decides to teach their child at home, either by themselves or by employing a teacher, they have to convince their local education authority, LE, that the teaching provided is satisfactory. Schedules, lesson plans, and book lists must be shown. And it must also be demonstrated that the child is in fact learning and that they have adequate opportunities for physical education and meeting other children. Furthermore, while there is no formal assessment, officers from the LEA will come and inspect what is being done and look at the child's exercise books. If they are not satisfied, they may make out a school attendance order. Social harm originates out of a series of debates within criminology about the narrowness of the definition of crime that essentially focuses on individual acts of harm, things like interpersonal violence, theft, so on and so forth. So the idea of social harm originally was to expand that notion of harm to encompass the harms that organizations and nation-states cause. But latterly, the idea of social harm really now transcends criminology. So there are a group of writers who think that, and I would include myself there, that actually there's something to social harm that could be very useful in terms of trying to understand the harms that occur within society, to produce an objective and well-rounded analyses of harm. This year marks the 400th anniversary of the first permanent English settlement in America. A group of Englishmen, including John Smith, who later was befriended by Pocahontas, built a fort at Jamestown, Virginia in 1607, 13 years before the Pilgrims crossed the Atlantic on the Mayflower. And for the past 14 years, Bill Kelso has been working to uncover the secrets of Jamestown. There are some 250 million cars in America. 250 million cars in the country with just over 300 million people. And most of those vehicles, of course, are gas-powered. This poses a huge challenge given the limited supplies of oil and the growing urgency of the global warming crisis. But there is good news, according to our guest today. And that is, we have the know-how and the technology to build sleek, fast automobiles that don't use gasoline. These vehicles of tomorrow are powered by hydrogen, electricity, biofuels, and digital technology. And they already exist. So what's stopping us from putting them on the roads? Our guests today will help answer that. As you know, there has been an unresolved debate as to when and why early humans first started to use fire. However, recent new findings from a study in South Africa have been the talk of the anthropological community. So what are these findings? Well, Prehistoric ash and the remains of burnt bones are evidence that early humans used fire much longer ago than previously envisaged. 300,000 years earlier than believed, in fact. Scientists have found evidence of multiple fires, ash and bones deep inside a cave, which means it is highly improbable the fires were started naturally. One question that still remains unanswered is why they were using fire. Some researchers are citing the burnt bones as proof that our ancestors cooked the meat, but it has also been suggested they ate the meat raw and then tossed the bones into the fire. The division of literary works into genres, or texts that deal with a particular subject, or a subject in a particular way, makes life easier for the person browsing in a bookshop. He or she can go directly to where their favorite kind of book is shelved, be it science fiction, gothic, romance, and so on. Many writers of genre fiction are immensely popular and successful, Stephen King and J.K. Rowling to name only two. But for the most part, such writers aren't depicting the world we live in and are writing fantasies. However, some genre writers, particularly writers of detective and police fiction, are unhappy about being categorized in this way. Genre fiction, they say, has come to be seen as inferior to what is called mainstream or literary fiction. In other words, detective fiction isn't taken seriously as literature, and yet crime novels do deal with the raw stuff of everyday life. They are, in fact, closer to the harsh reality of the modern world than most mainstream fiction. But, the critics say, while they do deal with the usual stuff of novels, character, emotion, psychology, social comment, and so on, it seldom goes very deep. And besides, most detective fiction, like certain mass-produced romantic novels, though not to anywhere near the same extent, follow a formula. Listening to the soft rustle of the leaves, it's a sound that you simply cannot hear without silence. What you can sense in the noisy environment becomes suddenly vivid in the quiet. How clear and pure the sound is. It's fascinating, but it's also soothing. Suddenly, it's as if another realm has touched your auditory sense, and you think, hey, I hadn't realized that something so faint, so subtle, could be so. Imagine if you could focus your nose the way you focus your eyes. Hybrid eyes now believe that animals with a highly developed sense of smell, like rats and dogs, do just that. Similar to the way we taste sweet, salty, sour, and bitter on different parts of the tongue, animals detect various smells in different parts of the nose. Researchers at the University of Chicago publicized that rats, by changing the way air flows across the insides of the nostrils, could direct the scent to the nasal region where it could be best detected. Turns out they were right. When presented with different odors, rats actually changed the way they sniffed. For example, long, slow sniffs for hard-to-detect scents, or short, fast ones for easy ones. Rats even sniffed minstrelsy while learning a new scent than when the smell was familiar. The study is in the Journal of Neuroscience. The researchers say the finding shows that there's more to a good sense of smell than fictionally thought. A necklace's nose is important, but so is how you use it. Cameras that catch drivers who blow through red lights are there to improve safety by discouraging light running. But such cameras actually increase the likelihood of car crashes because more drivers jam on the brakes in an attempt to make a late stop at unoccupied camera intersections. That's the finding of a study done by Sweeteners at the University of South Florida College of Public Health. They decided to look into the issue because Florida Lipids are considering installing many more such cameras around the state. The researchers contend that other studies generating cameras with fewer crashes and infamies are flawed. Those studies were linked with the Insurance Institute for Highway Safety, an industry group. But insurers may profit from red light cameras because revenues go up with increased citations and accidents. The new report notes that North Carolina, Virginia, and Ontario all had increased crash rates and injuries associated with red light cameras. In Florida, injuries related to red light running are down anyway, so drivers needing to make a quick decision at a yellow light may be better off not seeing red. They walked along the road in the moonlight. The firm has close ties with an American corporation. It is important to develop good study skills. Students cannot leave the campus during the break time.